Hi, I'm Joe Shannon, and I'm with the law firm of Shannon Law Group here in Chicago. Our firm helps people recover when they are injured due to side effects from vaccines. One of the persons at our firm that works on these cases every single day is Rhonda Lorenz-Pignato, and I'm happy to have this conversation with her about the program, specific tips for you, and information just in general for you. Also, it's important that you learn about this from other sources. We have a book that was written by one of our attorneys, Jonathan Svitek, which goes through the basics of the vaccine injury compensation program. And so you're going to want to download that from our website at shannonlawgroup.com, or check out some of the videos from our YouTube channel at Shannon Law Group, as well as any of the other social media apparatus that we use. But I wanted to introduce first Rhonda. Rhonda's been a lawyer practicing in medical negligence types cases, other liability forums, and has been an arbitrator in hundreds of cases, and most recently has been working a lot in the vaccine injury compensation program. So I want to welcome you, Rhonda, to the program.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
First of all, Rhonda, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background as a lawyer.
Well, as you said, I've done a lot of various different types of litigation, but a good substantial chunk of that is in the arena of medical malpractice and some general personal injury. I've been able to see that field from both sides, but most of my work so far has been from the defense side. Several years ago, I learned about how vaccine companies had a certain level of immunity under the law, and that there was a separate court for people who were vaccine injured. And I became very interested in that, and I started to study it. And then I stumbled across your firm as a local firm that was a leader in the area. And that's when I contacted you and said, hey, can we start collaborating on this? I would really love to learn more about it. It's really an interesting area of law. And there's a lot of people out there who have some substantial injuries, and I really am, it's my honor to help them.
Let's go to the basics here, because a lot of people that may be watching may not understand how this all works. We'll call them big pharma, the pharmaceutical companies that develop these vaccines. When they develop the vaccines, they're granted some immunities, like you mentioned, by the federal government. So it's very difficult to sue them directly. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, that is the case. There is a requirement that you go through the vaccine injury program before trying to go after them directly.
So, and the vaccine injury program is not a jury program. It's more of a special master who decides these types of cases, and it's all handled in DC, just so people understand all this, how this all works out. And it's not going to give people the full justice of the case. Is that your experience?
Yes. I mean, there's a limited number of damages you can recover from this program. So if somebody has a death as a result of a vaccine or a very devastating injury, if they were to file locally, local personal injury case because some company had done that to them, they may be able to recover millions upon millions of dollars. There are certain limitations as to what you can recover in this program, but it is a substantial amount. So if you are an injury, you definitely should explore this as an option of some compensation for having an injury from your vaccine.
I think the maximum amount that can recover in non-economic damages is in the order of right now about $250,000. Isn't that right?
Well, there's 4 elements of damages that you can recover in the program.
Let's talk about that.
Sure. To back up, first of all, there's 2 parts to a vaccine injury claim. The first part is causation, and that's you're showing that you had a vaccine that's covered under the program and you had an injury that is either covered in the table of the program or you've been able to prove facts that it is connected. So a determination is made or an agreement is made that the vaccine caused the injury. So that's the first part of the petition process. The second part is once you've established causation, you get to then prove what damages you have, and they're divided into 4 categories. The first category is out-of-pocket expenses. So that's anything that you pulled out of your pocket for things that aren't covered by insurance, any special devices you need, co-pays, that type of thing. The second element of damages relates to lost wages. if you lost some wages in the past due to your injury, or if you have proof that you will lose wages in the future, that can be established as well. The third category is future medical costs. So some of these injuries are permanent in nature or can be devastating to certain people, and they will need care for the rest of their life. So through expert testimony and proof, you can prove what those future medical costs will be, and the program is meant to compensate you for that as well. But the fourth category, which is the category that many of my clients are interested in, is pain and suffering, and that is the category that is capped. It's capped at $250,000. No matter what type of injury you are, that's as much as you can be compensated for your pain and suffering.
Just to be clear then, on the first couple, that, for lost wages, say for example, like a surgeon gets a vaccine and the side effects that she has is that she can't do her job as a surgeon anymore, and she's going to be losing $500,000 a year for the next 50 years. Is there any cap on her recovery for that?
I don't believe there is. No, I have not seen anything that caps that.
Is in your experience, even the safest vaccines that are out there, are there a certain percentage of people that are going to have some sort of side effects from vaccines?
Yes, there's a variety of side effects. The program is meant to compensate you if you have a side effect that is greater in nature. So for instance, sometimes people will go in for their annual flu shot and they'll be told that you may have soreness at the site. You may have a sore arm for an hour, a day, who knows, maybe even a week. You may suffer some flu-like symptoms. So you may get sick, and it may even feel very substantial to you. It may last a month. But in the program, that is not substantial enough to recover in the program. It's meant to compensate people who have fairly devastating injuries.
What are some of the injuries that we're talking about here? Give me some examples.
Well, one example, the program is constantly changing as to what types of injuries it will compensate. But one of the ones that I've seen very frequently are called SERVA injuries.
Do you know why they call it SERVA injuries?
Yes, that's an acronym. It stands for Shoulder Injury Related to Vaccine Administration. Those are different types of shoulder injuries that include things like your frozen shoulder, adhesive capsulitis, torn tendons, rotator cuff injuries. Some of those can be repaired, some of them cannot. Another thing that I see frequently is certain neurological disorders. One particular is called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And it is a horrible condition where your body starts deteriorating the sheath of your nerves. So someone could have gotten a vaccine, and a couple weeks later, maybe even a month and a half later, they start experiencing weakness and falls and don't know what the cause is. They need to seek some immediate treatment in order to make sure that they can catch that as quickly as possible, because it can create some very devastating results.
Let's talk about children that get vaccines. Is there a certain age requirement in order to file a vaccine petition?
No, there's no age requirement. You can be an hour old, you can be 100 years old. If you are a minor or a disabled adult, you can have a petition filed on your behalf by your parents or your administrator, somebody who's taking over your medical needs. It's important to note, though, if you do have a claim on behalf of a child, there's very strict statute of limitations in this program. Now, other types of personal injury, depending on the state you're in, there can be some wiggle room in statute of limitations. They can extend it through something called the discovery rule, where you didn't discover that your injury was associated with a particular thing, so that they'll extend it. Or for children, sometimes they allow longer statute of limitations, waiting until they're 18 years old. But there's no such extensions in this program. So if you do have a child or are representing someone, you need to file your claim within the requisite statute of limitations.
And what is typically the statute of limitations for filing these claims?
The statute of limitation in the vaccine recovery program is you must file your claim within 3 years of when your symptoms start manifesting. Or if there's a death involved, you need to do it within 2 years of the vaccine administration.
Those are pretty strict deadlines, especially if you have a 7-year-old or a 9-year-old that maybe couldn't figure it out.
Absolutely. And especially if you're a parent and you're dealing with some type of terrible thing happening to your child, you're probably not thinking in terms of recovering. You're probably thinking more in terms of how do I help my child? So it's important that we get this information out there so people do not lose their opportunity to be able to recover if they need financial help in treating a child who is vaccine injured.
Does it matter where, in what state or whether in the United States, whether you get the vaccine or not?
This is a federal program, so it doesn't matter from state to state. What does matter, though, is the general rule is that it covers vaccines that are administered within the United States. Now, there are 2 exceptions to that rule. They're very small exceptions, but they're exceptions that you should be aware of. One is if you're a United States citizen and you're stationed abroad and you have the vaccine. The other exception is if you're a United States citizen and you receive the vaccine out of the country, but the manufacturer of the vaccine is from the United States, and then you return to the United States within 6 months of getting that vaccine, then you may be able to file a claim within the vaccine injury program.
You mentioned something about a table before.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old, how this table works?
Sure. Yeah, that's how I like things explained to me. So let me put it simply. A table, to get it down to the bare bones, is a little graph. It's in the program, it has 3 different columns. So they put this table in the program to help guide you as to what you might need to prove in order to stay in the program. So the first column lists all of the vaccines that are covered by the program, because not every single vaccine that could ever be given is covered in this program. So there's a specific list of vaccines that are covered. If you have that, then you can stay in the program. The second column includes the injuries that are generally accepted as being related to those vaccines. And then the third column is the time frame in which they want to see you come up with the symptoms. So for instance, if you get the flu vaccine and you get a shoulder injury, which is called a SIRVA injury, SIRVA currently is on the table. So that means you will need to come up with less proof in order to show that your shoulder injury is related to the vaccine. As long as you have an injury that's on the table, it is much easier to prove the connection between the vaccine and the injury and to recover in the program. If the injury occurs within the time frame listed on the table, that is the best case scenario.
So it's not a guarantee you're going to recover, but it's pretty far down the road, right?
It goes a long way, yeah. If you fit within the parameters of that table, it goes a long way in being able to prove the causation part of your case. The only other obstacles might be if you have a pre-existing condition that's related to it. If there's any doubt in the records as to what your injury is, that may cloud it. But if everything's very clear that you didn't have this injury before, you got it within the time frame after you got your vaccination, and there's no discrepancy as to what your diagnosis is, it goes a long way in proving causation in the vaccine recovery program, and then it moves you right along if you can prove that, so that you can get into the damages phase and figure out how much you should be compensated.
Talk to me about an off-the-table case.
Well, if you have an off-the-table case, that means that you likely have an injury that's not listed on that table, in which case you need to prove causation. So it's almost like the same as trying to prove a lawsuit outside of the vaccine program. There's a good chance you'll need an expert. You may need medical literature supporting your position. Special masters, who are the judges in these cases, they take those off-table cases on a case-by-case basis. They do a thorough examination of all of your medical records, and they receive, like I said, medical literature and testimony from experts in order to decide whether or not they're going to acknowledge that your injury is actually a vaccine-related injury. How
are attorneys' fees paid in the vaccine injury compensation program?
The vaccine injury compensation program allows the program to pay your attorney's fees, which is really good. And that means that the program will be accessible to people whether or not they can afford attorney's fees or not. So it pretty much is no cost to a person who is vaccine injured to get an attorney and to enter into the program to see if they can recover for their injury.
I always tell clients when talking to them initially is they want to figure out what the net amount is going to be in their pocket as opposed to the gross recovery. But in the vaccine injury court, the gross recovery that they get, whether it's their medical bills that are not paid for by insurance, plus any lost wages, plus future earning capacity, plus future medical, and then they get a number for their non-economic or pain and suffering or loss of a normal life. Mm-hmm. That amount that's awarded, there's no attorney fees that come out of that. The court, which is, we'll talk about in a second, but the court pays the attorney directly for the amount of time that attorney spent on the case. Is that a good summary?
That is absolutely correct. Yes. The fund has been created, and we can talk about how that fund was created. But there's a big fund of money that's there, and it's meant to compensate the vaccine injured and to pay for your attorney's fees and the costs of your claim.
People can handle these cases by themselves, right?
They can, but it's very tricky. There's no reason why you wouldn't want to get an attorney to help navigate your way through the program, since it's not going to be money out of your pocket. There's a lot of different rules on how to get through the program, so I highly recommend that you consult with a vaccine injury attorney that understands how the vaccine injury program works, because they also need to be part of the federal claims bar in order to practice in this specific court.
Right. So the court that we operate out of is the U.S. Court of Claims in D.C., right?
That is correct.
You're a member of the bar there?
I am.
Okay, great. And then when you're handling these cases, how are you able to interact with clients from throughout the country?
Well, the way we communicate with our clients is usually by phone and by email. This court it's not completely virtual, but it's for the most part virtual. It's located in Washington, D.C. It's a specific court. So attorneys anywhere can represent clients as long as they're admitted to that bar. So if they ever do need a hearing where they need people to actually appear, many times they just appear virtually through a Zoom type conference. And that's how they go through the vaccine injury program.
Great. Anything else you want to tell our listeners about the vaccine injury program, Rhonda?
Yeah, just to give a little overview, this is what I usually tell our clients when they're coming to me for their initial intake, to explain just a quick little overview of what the vaccine injury compensation program is. Back in the 1980s, vaccine manufacturers were concerned about being sued, so they created this vaccine injury compensation program to create some limited liability for them from being sued for people that had vaccine injuries. The way the program works is that a 75-cent excise tax is placed on every vaccine that is given, and it's put into this giant pool of money that's called the Vaccine Injury Fund. Now, the Department of Health and Human Services is put in charge of this fund and is in charge of divvying it out in an equitable manner under the rules of the vaccine injury program. So when you have a vaccine injury, you're not filing a lawsuit against anyone. You're filing a petition in this program directed to the Department of Health and Human Services, basically saying, hey, I've got this vaccine injury. This pool of money is set up for people like me. I would like my slice of this pool of money so that I can be compensated for my injury and any future costs that I may have. So in general, that's how the program works.
Does the doctor or health care provider or any of the folks that administer the vaccines get sued?
Yeah, because this is not a lawsuit, this is a petition against the Department of Health and Human Services. You're not claiming that your doctor did something wrong, so this is not a medical malpractice suit.
We've been talking to Rhonda Lorenz-Pignato. Here she is in our latest newsletter. Rhonda has worked with us for over a year now, and we're more than thrilled to have her as part of our team. As you can see, she's eloquent, she's prepared to represent our clients. She's a person juries will like, and special masters in the vaccine injury compensation program will really appreciate. And we really appreciate you coming on the show, Rhonda. Will you come back again sometime?
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Joe. It's been a pleasure working with you. It's been a pleasure being part of Shannon Law Group. I'm so proud to be one of the gang here. Really is a stand-up place where anyone can come and they know that their rights will be protected and fought for.
Rhonda, thanks so much for coming on board and helping us today. And we'll be sure to talk to you again about some other issues of the day.
Thank you, Joe. Have a great day.
Listen, if you like these videos, if you like the content that we're providing to you, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Shannon Law Group. You can text me at my personal number, which is 312-847-2428, 312-847-2428.